pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. Roll call. Board members and 11 in attendance. This is a special meeting tonight, so we will be taking action on a number of things. First item is approval of the agenda as you have before you.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Bob Wood, second by Ethan. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion passes unanimously. Okay, we also will be holding an open forum, an opportunity for anybody to make comment or address the board. So, in the order that we have received requests or cards, I'll call on Daryl, Jackie, and Patty.
Okay. First of all, we would just like to say thank you for continuing to look into this building, the situation that we're in, and what's best for students, for staff, for the community. And at the last board work session, to have additional outside people come in that has a fresh look at what's going on here, I think was really important. And even following along with everything, very eye-opening to see even deeper what's happening here with this building. With looking at the current situation and potential solutions, we would like to advocate for a strong, true middle school concept for a potential new facility if that's the direction the board decides to pursue further. 6, 7, and 8, that the mindset and the growth and development of those individuals, keeping them together, they're crazy beasts, they're wild animals, they're wonderful, they're bright, and they just have very unique characteristics. They're not quite the little kids in the elementary, they're not quite the high schoolers. They're truly middle schoolers that need an area that's designed and separate for them.
I think you said it wonderfully, Daryl.
I would just add on to that. At this point, for the vast majority of the content areas that I'm aware of, the state standards are all grouped 6, 7, 8. I know specifically the ELA standards are grouped 6, 7, 8. Science standards, the 8th grade science test tests the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science standards. So all of our curriculum is already grouped that way, and it makes it difficult when we are trying to work in that group for our curriculum to work with our colleagues at the 6th grade level when they're not near us, and we have to try to plan times for that to get together. I know Daryl has made a concerted effort along with Mora and Marcia just to make sure that they can work together, because Daryl's science standards aren't tested until Marcia's 8th grade test, but they also include Mara's 6th grade science standards. And she's in a totally different building.
Yeah. Bless you for doing what you can without the physical.
Exactly. And so for us, it just makes sense curriculum-wise already. The state already recognizes that grouping of standards and what students are expected to learn and when they're expected to learn them. So we think that we should also recognize that grouping.
Good job, you two.
Thank you. I'm just going to go right into Mara and
Yeah, so we're just, that was great, Daryl. Thanks for taking all the really good points. But we just wanted to reinforce that it would be a great opportunity for 6th graders to be involved in a true middle school setting. They have physically outgrown the building that we are in. They are pretty big kids. And yes, they are the wild beasts, the originals. And we're kind of our own little island right now. We have 3 of us in a preschool wing and 2 of us with the 5th grade classes. And as much as I love the preschoolers, it would be nice to have our whole team together and be able to collaborate. And like they said, the standards are all aligned, 6, 7, and 8, and it really does make sense. And we would really love that opportunity. So we just kind of wanted to come and reinforce that and just let you know that we appreciate everything you're doing, and we're really excited for this possibility.
we are really, yes. Well, thank
Everybody
you.
said everything.
Yeah. appreciate everybody's willingness to also work through the transitions and work with whatever you're expected to, based on what we have. But, I don't think anything that's said can be disputed, and the board knows that. And there's such an argument for seriously looking at things like this if we're starting with a blank campus, so to speak, or if we have the chance to really, give it the due diligence. So, makes complete sense. Can't make promises. We're working toward what's best for the district and the kids and education, and certainly is a sound educational way it goes. Thank you, everybody. Good job. Okay, is there anybody else that would like to address the board before we have another request? Okay. Then we will move into item number 3 and an updated referendum plan, budget and options. I think everybody here tonight is pretty familiar with the discussion ongoing, and continue to tweak it and update and share information. So
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you, Jeff, and
Okay.
Vaughn also.
With me, I've got, Von Dirksen from Wolf, going to be helping out, as well as Greg Crow from Ellers. And very familiar crew for you folks. And I think a lot of the slides are going to be very familiar. We're just going to go through some recap of your last referendum. We'll talk about draft project, we'll talk about draft budget. We did look at how can we incorporate future 6th grade into the concepts, right? Where you could add it at a later date, or where might it go, so that there is a middle school concept, at least in the planning stages. So we'll share some of that. We've got draft ballot language information, very similar to last time. Talk next steps and timeline, and ultimately you'll be authorizing administration to submit a review and comment, as you have in the past, for MDE approval. Okay, next. Your enrollment, you remember about a year ago you did enrollment projection, and you're pretty flat with trending a little up, right? So again, you're a very healthy school district from a number of students, as well as the design concepts and space programming accommodates your future slight growth as part of the square footage. Next. This was an Eller slide from the last referendum. I added it, kept it included, but it's probably a year dated. MDE has you as the oldest high school in the region, and remember MDE, when they do their age and square footage report, they cap it for certain spaces, right? But you do have the oldest high school in the region, as you're aware. Next. There's a slide from Vaughn and Wool that looked at your educational adequacy. Again, it was referred to at the last meeting. If we're going to do any sort of remodeling here, boy, it's difficult to address the inadequate size of spaces to deliver education, and the good work that your teachers and educators do in really tight and cramped spaces, according to the Department of Education guidelines for school construction. Next. As you heard last week, with the many different independent consultants that came through, as well as your staff, you have a lot of significant needs in this building, and again, we won't go through them all in detail. We spent a lot of time last week, as well as your building committee will be further scouring this as they start to work on prioritization from Plan B in the next few weeks. Next. You have a lot of safety needs as well. A lot of health and safety needs, hazardous materials, crossing the road, those types of things. Lack of secure entrance. Next. We did a year ago look at a repair and renovate option with Citizen Task Force that identified $42 million in repair needs here at this site. Does not address the road out front, and does not address all of your educational needs, because a lot of them you just can't fix, right? You recall, looked at construction inflation, averaging 4.24%. What does that do to your 42 million if you wait 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years? Similar to the same cost for new construction. You're up against those inflationary costs of construction. Next. Your space program is the same. have the same space program. We did look at what would it take to add a sixth grade. You'd be adding, was it about 8,000 square feet roughly?
Roughly.
If you did add a sixth grade. But essentially, we've kept your square footage the same as you had in your November election. Next, it totals your 7 through 8 and your 9 through 12, plus space for auditorium and office, for a total of 168,000 square feet. This was your draft layout last time. I'm gonna let Ron's done some tweaking based on staff input on how would you maybe separate a 7, 8 and have a future spot for a sixth grade. So he's gonna talk about that in just a minute. You remember you had many site layouts. We went back through history and how various consultants looked at laying out the site from various, over the various years. Pretty similar concepts to where you've been going. If you go to July of 2019, that was your last one. And that's updated to the next slide. And I'll turn it over to Vaughn, just talk about the site layout briefly. And then also some of the changes on the space layout.
Sure. So, a little odd to start with site, but we do know that based on changes that we've made, we've prepped for the future. And that's really a big part of this is master planning for the future. So when we worked on the wellness center, it wasn't just about the wellness center, it was how would this tie into a potential high school on the same site? Where would we want to have parking? How would you separate the bus and the traffic parking? How would you think about service coming in? And so we know it wants to come over in this direction. It does mean the stadium has to move to the north in order to be able to accomplish that. But other than that, there's a lot of space in the site to not only provide the school, but also some additional overflow parking, which would serve well for the community using it on weekends and after hours. Next. So in the previous diagram, we had 7, 8, 9, 12 in an academic area, and I'll actually have you flip forward one further on this. This illustrates why this is simply a diagram. This is not a floor plan. This is not intended to be designed, because in design we'd have lots of criteria, like we want to be able to separate 7th and 8th grade from the 9th through 12th grade, as opposed to having them all together. So one of the things that we looked at was, based on that idea, it would be very easy for us to have a 7th, 8th grade area in one spot and a 9, 12 area in another spot, and then start to look at where your specialists are, build the 7th and 8th grade areas first, 9th and 12th grade later, but still keep science together, keep your shops and specialist areas together. They'll still use the same commons, same kitchen space, but our music can expand as the building grows, the athletic spaces can expand as the building grows. If you go back one, Jeff. So that would allow you in the short term, if you were simply to build a middle school concept, to build this part of the building and add on to it as you go forward. It's one of the things I've done many times over the last 25 years is add on to buildings that were never planned for expansion. So it is a tenet of everything we do is to always plan for how you would expand a building, always be thinking about what the district might do in the future. And there's ways to get there. This also places 7th and 8th grade in an area that we could expand with 6th grade if you wanted to do it now, if you wanted to do it in the future, and thinking through both of those expansion concepts. So this is simply just a fit diagram to see how might it lay out on the site and what would the components be that would be part of that building. And as we would go into design, if you were successful in referenda, we'd be looking at all that criteria and trying to decide how do you lay this building out to plan best for the future. I think that's everything that I have.
Yeah, you got a spot where 6th grade could be added.
Yeah, here,
So-
could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Might be 1-story building, might be a 2-story building, lots of options. So. And this would be updated to match whatever the concept was. This still shows the 7, 8, 9, 12 on the same side, but again, it's a concept, it's massing, and so we can update this diagram to show that revised layout for how it would fit on the site. And you see about the size of it there. With, if you were to include the wellness center, which would be part of those gyms that are typically associated with the high school, you can see proportionally it's about the same size as Trail. And just in taking a look at the elementary side to it, if you were to move 6th grade over, then you'd have the question of, well, what goes into that space? Do we trade out where we would build district office space for 6th grade space? And start to look at some of those scenarios as you move forward. And again, can be done now, can be done in the future.
Can you talk, there was some concerns from elementary parents that, oh my gosh, we got the high school right next to the elementary, we got parking right next.
Yeah.
Can you explain the separation that you have kind of planned out?
If you flip back a couple of slides to that site slide, because I think it shows it easier here. Our elementary parking, staff parking, our drop off for parents over on this side, our high school parking, a different area. We could actually bring high school drivers in from one side, parents in from the other side. But we know one of the benefits of a campus setting, if I'm a parent, and I have one student in elementary school, another in middle school, I do not want to have to leave the site to come back on the site. And so we would think through those traffic patterns. The most important thing is keeping our buses separate from our high school drivers and from our parents, because we can't teach parents how to drive. We can teach bus drivers, we can somewhat control the high school students, but parents are gonna go where they go. So having our bus drives and our service points very separated and making it very intuitive too. So when I come on site, it's a very easy pickup point. We have a lot of queuing space lined up because more and more parents are showing up to pick up their kids, as you see every day on site.
So at this point, or going forward, we'll have been there with the entire Mora Elementary now for a couple years,
Yep.
what's going on 2 years. There are concerns now from parents, from community people or people in the neighborhood about the traffic flow and the congestion. Can we address that with a plan like this to sort of put people's minds to rest that
Absolutely.
if we're going to continue building up there or moving more, you know, students and, you know, obviously more traffic?
Referendum is a great time to be able to do that.
Can we clearly communicate that now that it will be addressed?
Sure. Yeah,
Even though we
absolutely.
don't know how, but.
Well, I think we want to work very closely with the city and the county in terms of what's vehicular access look like, where do we want to bring these people in to minimize the impact on neighborhoods, as well as what potential traffic patterns can we create on the site to help alleviate them as we go through.
I think that keeps some people on the fence as far as supporting anything further.
But again, a campus layout is not uncommon. Most districts would love to have that campus approach, and it brings a lot of opportunities to clean up the traffic and make it work more efficiently.
It's just increased considerably from where it was.
Agreed.
Can you back up a slide or two, the total square footage? That 168,000, that is what's proposed, and that does include space for sixth.
It does, no, this has sixth grade at Trailview, so if we were to revisit that, we would take a look at what in this number might go into Trailview if sixth grade was gonna come over here. Because you probably wouldn't just vacate Trailview with nothing in place for that. So we'd look at how can we keep that number reasonable by saying, what would we maybe put into the Trailview space to replace sixth grade?
Okay, so there would be some.
There'd be some
shifting.
Yes.
But the square footage, that would be the same, that could include sixth.
Right, and the only reason that we haven't put it in here is we haven't talked about putting it in other than some side conversations on what if we thought about that. So it would be pretty easy to program that. We did meet with the administration and talked about what would we bring over for sixth grade if we were doing that. Because it would be a philosophical shift as well. You'd be shifting from a homeroom type of a setting to a scheduled type of a setting that you have with middle school. And so you look at your classroom quantity very different than you would from an elementary standpoint.
Yeah, an example of shifting space would be district office, right? District office, right now, we have slotted into the new square footage for 7 through 8, but you could have district office in Trailview, which frees up that new construction space for sixth grade, for example, right? So you'd have options like that, right? Where you also bid additional space for, as an alternate, it's,
The overall space is there for what we need, we just have to figure out a program.
yeah. I think there's ways to run through it if there was a strong desire to do that.
Yep.
How about from a campus size standpoint, our access all being on that 9th Street versus the north-south, if we had some of that connecting property, would that be a better access point for the high school? We could separate those two traffic patterns.
And we talked about if this land were available, you would very much like to bring in some different traffic patterns to get it off of 9th Street to do that, so yes. We could even take a look at, you bring it all the way up
I
here.
was gonna say, worst case scenario, if we can't afford to upgrade, could we still have access off those streets?
We could. It's a little less intuitive to have people come all the way up there,
But it just seems like we're going to have to look at some ways
It
to
really
alleviate the,
And a separation from the public standpoint
Yeah.
of high school drivers next to elementary schools. And I've heard that a couple of times, anxiety that
it's unsettling.
creates.
it's all awesome. And in the end, if you really start taking a look at it, this is one diagrammatic option which keeps parking off the front, but if the desire is to move everything up here, then we probably would take a look at rerouting the building to the other way, move parking lot to the other side, leave the stadium in one area and try and come up with some other options. Again, pre-referenda is all diagrammatic. It helps us understand, do we have enough room and what's the budget need to be for these components? But whether this high school parking is here or here, how much road infrastructure we have, it doesn't really matter too much. We can put it wherever it wants to go, but we need more of that criteria-based discussion with you as a district to say what's important, what do we want to plan for, what do you want to design for. So this is us in a vacuum saying, put it here. If you say we really want to put all of our traffic along Grove as we come in here, do criteria for us. Okay, how do we do that? What does that look like?
I do think that's gonna be important to separate those traffic patterns, because that area is yeah, it's a zoo in the morning and afternoon.
Other thoughts? Back to Jeff.
Alright.
Thank you.
So one of the things I think as we transition to budget, you know, remember we're gonna be replacing, you know, the baseball field, right? And moving the football fields slightly north, right? At least we have that allocated in the budget. But as Vaughn talked about, if this might stay as the baseball field, we might reroute parking in a different location, right? Again, it's not designed yet, but we have dollars in to reallocate those things. Another thing that, and you guys have heard your football coach come continually talk about, don't forget about football and about play space and about not creating the same problems where you have to go off campus, right? So one of the things we did was we allocated additional dollars so that this field could potentially down the road be turfed down the road if he could raise the funds separately. But that would prevent from having to come here, right? So just so that you're aware, again, more feedback is kind of helps improve the plan. Okay, next. So there's your budget really is, follows right in line with the referendum. Totally you had last time, with a slight change in the allowance for athletic with a small amount. But really your construction inflation, so a half a year of construction inflation. Remember a full year is about 4.2%. We got a 2.1% from November to May increase, you know, which does add $1 million or $1.2 million in total to your project, right? Again, the cost of construction inflation. I saw a community member last week when we were here on Thursday mention, gosh, a referendum the first time was $60 million that took care of Fairview and the high school and bus garage about 10 years ago, right? So it does go up over time. Okay. I turn it over to Greg Crow. Any questions on budget?
Got hard copies of the next few slides here. I should keep one. Oh, I got one. So if you,
Can I ask one question about the budget? Can you back up one?
Sure.
When you take a look at that, you see the soft costs on there. You see that at $7,843,000. So the total with soft costs comes out at $60,768,000. And so what percentage is that? I keep hearing that it's 25% soft costs. So
I have to do the back math on it.
the way I did it came out about 12.8%.
Yeah.
And so when you hear that 25%,
25% would include not only the soft cost, but the contingency, the FFE, the everything basically below that line from construction.
yep, and that contingency, the owner costs of the FFE and technology, all that stuff goes into the project. It's not engineering, it's not architectural, it's not what I've read in the paper sometimes when they say that all, you guys are making all this money.
No, everything
It's
above
the 12% piece that's soft costs.
Correct.
Yeah, let me try to describe your line items a little so that you understand. Obviously, you have your construction square footage, and it's a simple multiplier. I think it's $244 a square foot gives you your construction cost to build. Athletic allowance would be the athletic to move and reallocate field. Building demolition would be the cost to take this building down if you didn't find a buyer, so to speak, similar to what you did with Fairview. Site work, parking, green space, utilities, pretty self-explanatory. There's your bid day construction costs, right? Those are all competitively bid, right? We've got construction inflation because, you know, obviously time adds cost. Your construction contingency will be the dollars allocated. Usually partial goes to design to allow you for changes, and then also for construction changes that may occur as you get going on construction or unforeseen items. But you have an allowance there, right, to hopefully stay under budget. Owner costs, FF&E technology and so on. I always say if you took the building and turned it upside down and shook it, that's all a FF&E, furniture, fixtures, equipment, right? That's a line item for there. You'll be ordering desks or chairs or technology and IT and infrastructure. General conditions is cost for dumpsters, trailers, safety fencing, state permits. Those are all line item allocations that you would see on an ongoing basis as you have in the past. And then you have your design, project management, engineering, soil borings, all those types of things. So,
And actually,
Yep.
if you were to take construction management, if, say you were gonna bid this as a general contractor, your construction costs would go up because the amount that's allocated towards construction manager is also, would be a cost that would be associated with a general contractor. So some of that soft cost is actually, if you were just looking at general contractor, it would be related to construction as well. So it's even less.
But I want to point out is the soft costs, the architectural, the engineering, the construction management, all of those soft costs. If you take that number and divide it by the total project number, you come up with 12.9%.
Right.
So this 25% that you read about when some of the other people talk about, it's less than 13%.
Correct.
Okay.
Labor, construction management, and general contracting, but in the night of the work session, a citizen did have a question about comparing or the difference between construction manager and general contractor. Is there any way to just give a comparison in a nutshell, or is that a whole nother?
go for it.
I'm not looking for
Yeah.
anything
So
lengthy,
you're
but
more
it
of
would
a
just be
third party
nice if
to share
people
that.
are really wondering that and thinking that we could be saving considerable money.
So the way we usually describe it is, it's the number of bids you receive. So in a general contractor package, all of the work that's in the project is going to be consolidated by a general contractor who gives you one bid on bid day and says, we'll build this building for $46,350,000. All of the contracts are underneath that general contractor. The issue is, you don't know who's going to be low contractor on that day. You might get contractor A, B, C, you're going to have to take the lowest responsible bid, which everybody bidding the project is gonna have a bid bond and security, so they'll be responsible bidders. Some districts have an anxiety over that and say, I don't know who I have for a general contractor. I'd rather hire this construction manager myself and have them manage all the different bids. So in essence, you still have all the bids, a concrete bid, a mechanical bid, a masonry bid, a casework bid, et cetera. And you have the contracts with all them, but your construction manager organizes them, manages the construction process, therefore the term construction manager. But you choose who you're going to be working with as part of your team up front in hiring a construction manager versus having a general contractor do it on bid day.
And then the construction manager is looking out for your best interest, right? And helping you sort through that. The other thing it allows is a better opportunity for local bidders, right? If you put it all out to one general contractor, you could have a general contractor come from Chicago and bring all of their contractor friends up as part of that bid package. And you as a school board are stuck taking the lowest responsible bid, and you may not be able to have local folks work on. So that's one of the other main reasons that a lot of schools use construction management in their processes.
All right. So you got a copy of this, if you remember this number from the previous page, or previous slide, 67,688,804. So that's the construction cost. And that's with a $61.9 million bond question. That's the amount then that would be used for paying the budget costs on the previous page. So how we get to that, and relative to the election in November, the largest change is on this capitalized interest line. So we're assuming about $450,000 of interest earnings in the construction fund, which is a fairly conservative assumption. But if you've watched the news, you know that interest rates are down. That'll likely benefit you when you sell the bonds, but it cuts back on the money you earn while you're holding the construction funds. But that investment earnings basically offsets the two smaller parts of the cost of issuance, the discount to the underwriter, so basically the bank fee, and then legal and fiscal fees of $200,000, which is our fee, bond attorney fee, rating agency fee, all of the other things associated with issuing the bonds. So those kind of wash each other out, that earnings and these two expenses. This $1 million reflects, if you remember from when we had the last election that was in May and was successful, the first payment comes due in fiscal year 2021. You've already set your levy for pay 20 for fiscal 2021. So that interest payment comes out of the proceeds of the bond. So we add $1 million to the bond, and then that $1 million, when you sell the bonds, gets taken and segregated and can only be used for that first interest payment, since you won't be able to levy for it. So that's really the biggest difference on this side of it. So in terms of why the question amount is slightly different. Okay, seeing some head nods. All right, so let's look at the ballot question. Did you get the debt plan in here too, in the chart? Okay, so we can go back, whatever was the ballot question, and what was, where we at? Okay, so two major differences on here relative to the structure of the debt. If you look at the detailed debt plan, all the small numbers that you really don't want to read, the amortization of principal and interest, we calculate the state aid share, and you know that you qualify for state aid, and the state will assist you in paying for your bonds. If you take the total state aid divided by the total levy over the life of the bonds, it amounts to about 30%, is our current assumption of how much the state will pay relative to what you levy. Or, so each mortgage payment, the state's roughly going to pick up 30%. What's different about this compared to November is that percentage is slightly lower because this, your current debt, represents the first tier where we've had this discussion where you get almost no equalization assistance. So anything above that qualifies for equalization. When we get, because this is a 20-year bond, in November, it started this year, and there was one final payment that was the full height of this bar. Now, because we're moving back a year, we've added a payment at the end to continue to make it 20 years. But these portions, anything in red that's under that kind of current line of about $1.6 million in debt service, don't qualify for aid. So this is picking up a little bit less aid, and the whole plan is picking up a little bit less aid because of that end payment. In addition,
what is the difference about from last time to now?
What was the what?
The difference from the total state aid that we would have had last time for this. How much have we missed out on?
It's about, I think it was about 8 million, I had that somewhere. But the primary reason, the other reason for the difference is that we're assuming a lower interest rate. And when you have a lower interest rate, your payments are lower. And so that comes into play as well in terms of how much you get from the state, because you have less payments. So it's a good thing. It's like something's on sale, right? So you don't want to, you'd rather not pay the extra than pay the extra and get 30% off, right? So that comes into play as well.
Greg, one thing that would be a little confusing maybe for the community too is last time it was a 7 and 8 question, ballot question, and then the 9 through 12. And the 9 through 12 would have been all the higher state debt equalization rate.
No, because remember we had the step down, so there was a shift in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so there was a structure that basically didn't split it evenly like that and qualified the second question. It qualified for more.
For more.
But it wasn't exactly linear to the size of the bond because of that step down we had built in. Did you want to talk about the ballot question? Did you have? Yeah. So basically the exact same question from last time, except combined into a single question. So nothing additional, and the reference to the grade 7-12 building addition at Shelby site. right?
But we have to modify on there if we wanted to go with the 6th grade middle school.
Just, this number would have to be changed to 6 for the ballot question.
And then from a 7 to a 6.
There are a few other references in the legal documents, but that's really the only change that would need to be made.
And if you were ideally building new square footage for 6th grade solely on top of, at about 8,000 square feet, it'd be about 2.5 million in additional costs. I think we can work within your budgets and try to find a way to give at least an alternate or some other ideas, moving the district office into Trailview, for example. that you
How many
already have
6th
in
grade
the budget.
classrooms do we have currently?
5.
5.
We had figured 6 in that budget of 8,000 square feet, right?
So then if we look at the tax impact, I think that's probably the next slide.
Just for the ones who look closely at this language and they see instead of 7 through 12, it's now 6 through 12. We're going to maybe jump to the assumption that we're sneaking in some more square footage compared to the last ballot question. If we're going to add 6 instead of just 7 through 12.
That would be something we would be answering quite a bit around the community.
It was 7 through 12, well now
Trying
we're
to
going to
sell
build
that.
6 through 12, so it's gotta,
But I think if it's marketed correctly in the educational adequacy is 6 through 8.
I'm
and
just
grouping
talking
them.
about when they read the ballot.
Right.
Which we know they do because it's always unsettling to.
Well, then to Ethan's, in the ballot, it says the demolition or sale. Is that wording going to affect that group that you had talked about?
They wanted to just demolish.
Yeah,
Or.
I've heard that as well. Just get rid of the building as a
This
whole.
site left to sale would be a disaster for this community.
Right.
If it's not them,
This building.
this
This
building,
building.
yes, thank you. This building, the potential for somebody irresponsible to buy it and then leave it. We've seen it in other communities. I really want to say the demolition of this building.
Yes.
And tried to stress that the other night, but it's going to come up again.
Well, especially if it says in the question or.
That's,
I
but,
was pointing to get back to the nine.
yeah, and I don't know if you wanna have, I mean, the sale could be the sale of the site after the building is demolished.
But it has
So-
verbiage to it. I mean, I think, if all possible, it'd be nice to be very clear in that the intent, the plan is to demolish this building. With this passing, this building will come down. Sure.
Demolition of the building and sale of the site.
Well, I mean, I guess you could sell a property regardless of whether the ballot question says it, because it's surplus school property at that point when there's no building left on it. So I guess you probably don't need the ballot authorization to sell an empty piece of land, right? Yeah.
That's true.
I do have a suggestion on the 6th grade question. I'm thinking back now to relocated Fairview to Trailview. We had a lot of discussion in design about how many gyms to build and whether or not to add the second gym. Second gym wasn't part of the ballot scope, but if we look at overall the projects and as you go through planning and criteria design, you think about, well, what do we want to accomplish? And we would have master planned for it or we would have built it. We looked at how do we balance everything in the budget to get you what you need at the time of design. We're going to have that conversation during design about, well, what does it look like if 6th grade is here? And as we go through, we'll run scenarios during design to see, can we move 6th grade as part of this or not? It doesn't have to be in the question here. We would anticipate it as part of the process to go through and
That's
say.
where I was going, so does that even have to be changed?
No, I would suggest that based on everything you've done so far and what your community's read before and looked at, your better option is to say, we're budgeting a 7-12 building, but during design, we will have conversations about what would it take to bring 6th grade here at some point, whether it's now or in the near future, we're going to plan for our design. If we can implement it now, you can implement it now.
Make this simpler, we keep it less than we're gonna have. Because we know we're gonna have trouble.
Right.
So I would look at, the teachers and that too, say, does that make sense to to you guys, it does to us, but I'm saying, yeah, we're certainly, I haven't heard or sensed any sort of opposition, to, yeah, let's do a 6 to 8, let's get to a middle school. I think there was last time, if we were talking a separate thing going, whoa, wait a minute. But if we get everything passed up there, then we're, yeah, how do we make this fit? And the next part of, we keep it simple, as simple as we can. And that, to me, is also including that for sale, it's just the demolition is coming down.
And that's what there's a line item specifically for the demolition of this building. If we get rid of the sale, that piece of it, just say for the demolition, it takes out that question.
And then the 712,
There'd be a lot of conversations around your overall budget too. If we get to 6th grade and we say, okay, because of everything we're doing, let's say it's $1 million, how do we find $1 million in our budget? It might be, well, we're gonna have to do this for less and this for less, maybe the contingency has to go down a little bit, or we have to get a better sale on the building, that's gonna all add up to whatever that bottom line is, but you'll constantly be balancing your budget line to take a look at how do we achieve this. So it's a way of implementing all of your goals within that.
Line
But
isn't changing for the project, nor is the store.
the baseline says, at a minimum, we're doing 7-12, and during design, you look at how do we implement 6th grade into this.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna take a lot of planning and design and working with principals and administration if we're gonna look at putting them in Trailview. Where do you put them, right? And then we could allocate that 4,000 square feet to the new building, right?
So as long as
That
the
darn near
language
gets your
doesn't
four,
have to change
let's get your
about
4 out of the 5
that.
classrooms, right?
Yeah.
And then also in here with our ALC, I don't, it's not in here, but to me it is, because our ALC is part of, our high school is part of our programming. That also we can have blocked off. I'm going, this is just me thinking out loud, but I'm thinking that we can, because then we can do something, again, that might, not tons of it, but we have 4,000 square feet there, another room or 2, or whatever, if we have an ALC, that can get us more square feet and.
Yeah, I think one of the things that your staff bring up that makes you really think is at least be planning for the 6th grade at the very least, and where you might add it and have it forethought, even if we didn't put it in now.
Yeah.
And another example is if you do have growth in your elementary school, that's an easy add to add 6th grade in. Or if you start to add early childhood and more early childhood, it would be a natural transition to put 6th grade where it really fits a middle school concept. So I commend your staff for bringing
Might even be
these
an alternate
thoughts
as
and
part of the
ideas.
design. That's an alternate on there that we get a bid number for it, and we see, if we get great bid numbers on bid day, then you've got the alternate already in place, and you do it that way. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of options for how you can consider.
The challenge is you're trying to get out from the 7 through 12 high school you're sitting in today, right? And it's hard to add stuff when your most critical thing that you're trying to address today.
The only thing I would add to the discussion is, there's not a lot of fluff in the budget to say, oh, don't worry about it, there's an extra $2 million in
Right.
there. It's not like that. It would be part of the conversation of, based on everything we have in the scope, how do we want to look at this? If 6th grade becomes a priority, what else are we doing, and what could we talk about? Do we do all of these items or not? We're gonna bring 7-12 for sure, and we look at how do you implement 6th grade as part of the design. And if nothing else, it'll be a master plan for implementation at some point in the near future.
Problem is, it's been so hard to do any moving forward that it feels like this is our opportunity. So to say, oh, we can do it in the future, sounds okay in a discussion like this, but it seems like an unbearable mountain. After, if we get this passed, everybody will relax, and then we'll be not in an ideal situation with the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade area. Lease levy, I know, but that's not ideal financially either.
But at least then it does put that into the realm of realism, and that, I mean, and those dollar amounts, that square footage, it does fit into that. Yeah.
And I think the population growth or addition of greater pre-K,
Well, I think in a way it would be similar to, like you said, marketing. We've talked about the importance of focusing on, this is going to improve career tech ed.
space. Another thing would be, for a lot of families, I think if they hear that we are going to a middle level concept, 6, 7, 8, that could be a real,
There's an appeal to
that could
that.
be a real positive in trying to say this is another reason why we need the space.
I kind of feel like that's an important piece. We're talking about $2.5 million or something like that, if that's just the space. But if we can create
Make it happen.
space within the existing trail view to accommodate for some of this other square footage, maybe we still have the budget for remodel and changing of that area. So it isn't a complete half and half type thing, but I do think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, the decision really is yours as a board. I mean,
It just needs to continue to be part of the discussion, and I think it's gonna continue rising to the top.
Another way you could
See
think
if
of
we
it,
can make it work.
based on conversations I have with other districts, is sometimes communities don't want to put, am I voting on grade structure or am I voting on replacing a building? And right now, the language is you're voting on replacing the building that holds your 7-12 population, but if you put the 6th grade in, you're saying we're voting on not only replacing that building, but also reorganization of our grades, and whether or not you can have that message be clear, and if it's a positive or not. And that's really kind of, I think, how you have to evaluate it.
yeah, and then you as a district, you know, you do have lease levy authority for things like growth, or things like early childhood, or things like, you know, those types of, that's typically what your lease levy authority is for, right? Here, if your referendum fails and you start looking at Plan B and you're looking at lease levy authority for a safe, secure entry and additional tech ed space. Better use down the road and looking at your 6th grade than here, being tied up here. Right? So just, you know, you're not tying the hands of future boards, you're giving more flexibility.
All right, so I think tax impact is next, and if you had memorized this chart in November, you notice the numbers are almost exactly the same. So in November, on a $100,000 home, the tax impact was about $229, so $19 a month. The reason the bond is a couple million higher and the tax impact is the same as it relates to the interest rate assumptions. So a pretty familiar story in terms of tax impact. The only major deviation is in the agricultural land. So this section here. So previously, let me down here. Previously, the levy would have gone on in 2020, and the ag tax credit was 50%. The first levy that you'll certify for this bond would be in 2021. The tax credit is 51% or 55%, so that extra 5% reduces the tax impact on agricultural landowners. And for the election, we'll do a couple of charts for you that help express that, because it'll continue to go down through 2023 when the credit is 70% in 2023 and going forward. So that will have a beneficial impact with the state picking up an additional part of the project, as we talked about in November, over and above the equalization aid. Any questions? All right.
Ag to school credit, is there anything that citizens or farmers need to fill out?
No.
If there's ag to school, for them to get the credit?
Yeah, there's a couple common questions with the ag to school. One is, do we have to apply for it? And no, most of the farmers now know. They'll see on their tax statement the reduction just listed right there. The other question we get is, does everyone else have to pay more because the farmers are paying less? And the answer to that is also no. It's not a distribution or a redistribution of the tax. It's simply a buy down of the levy for agricultural landowners.
In the form of increased state aid.
Yes. So the school district levies whatever the payment is for that year, if it's 2 million, and if ag landowners own, or if their share is $200,000, you'll levy 2 million, collect 1.9 million under the 50% credit, and the state will send you another $100,000 to backfill that, so you still have to 2 million to make your payment.
And the same thing with the general state aid for a homeowner. Correct? There's no papers to fill out, there's nothing, everything, me as a homeowner, I just get my tax statement, it's already calculated in there. And the state basically just sends to the county and then to us, the state aid.
Yeah, the county just gets it. Remember, the county collects the levy, the state sends the aid directly to the district as part of the aid payment system. And we'll also want to talk again about property tax refunds for homeowners. The state has a system for lower income property owners that see higher tax bills. We can run some examples of what that might mean for someone, making X dollars of income in a X dollar home, and give you a sense for how much the state would pick up of the additional tax if they apply for the credit. They do have to apply for that refund. All right.
And that ag to school credit is going to continue to be phased in incrementally
Yep.
each year?
So
So the
for
next
taxes
year
payable
will be-
21, it's 55% of the tax bill. For 22, it's 60% of the tax bill. For payable 23, it's 70%, and that's where it stays then going forward.
Thank you.
So there's a general timeline here, but there's the resolution, if you consider it, has a more specific timeline laid out of all of the legal steps that are required in the election. And you're gonna talk about this, I
Sure.
assume.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
And then
Yep.
other dates that you have before you that you've established is February 18th, building committee to finalize your Plan B, and what that might look like. The recommendation of the board on the 27th for action on Plan B. So you have time to communicate with the comparisons for the community on your Plan B plan and your referendum plan. And then your election day would be the 12th of May.
And we have enough time to set for the submittal with the review and comment and all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, anybody have questions? this time? Any of the presenters? So supposing the referendum fails, then we also have to deliberately set a time to come back to the table and the what, or if not this, then. And, I mean, is that going to be an important part of our communication? Because this is what we've been
Well, that's Plan
working
B.
toward,
Yeah,
right?
that's Plan B.
So
it's-
that's why I'm bringing it up,
it's-
because it's not just out there floating somewhere. We need the contingency plan if, in the event the referendum fails, then we are back to Plan B.
Whether that's our May meeting or that we authorize the sale of the bonds at the May meeting. I mean, we will know what our plans are, what we're gonna do ahead of that time, and we would know the dollars are.
So it would be an agenda item.
I think it would be, that would be my thought.
We want to back up one slide there with those additional dates. I think that's what that piece there is February 10th is tonight. You would need to take action tonight for new construction. And
Great.
we have the 12th, I believe, review and comment has to be in, so it means we have to get it done tomorrow and deliver it
Right.
the next week.
That's-
So we'll get that
That was the
done.
date that was stuck in my head.
Yeah, and then on February 18th, we have a building committee meeting to review and go in further depth into the other option, the Plan B piece. And then at the February 27th board meeting, the board could take action on Plan B. And the reason for that is that each of those various components, each of those financial tools, Greg, maybe you can help me out with this if I misspeak, but each of those financial tools take its own individual application with MDE. Is that correct? So for like air quality, if we're going to use that piece, that's in and of itself. The parking lots or the abatement bonds, and that's a separate application, and that's in and of itself.
You don't have to apply, but that's a separate board action on each one.
Separate board action. It has to be done individual. It can't be just done as one sweeping concept of what this is Plan B. So we need to take action on those pieces ahead of time.
Essentially, it would be a second review and comment talking about this is the project you're going to do at this site because it's over the dollar amount for what would be required for review and comment, and then all the funding sources would be explained in that review and comment document in the steps.
So in other words, scrap the stuff in May, we'll be doing it in February, and then setting up that timeline. And I understand what you're saying, you know, that really helps you both, yeah.
And we scrapped the idea of 2 questions, the second question being original?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Is that, because we're gonna get back.
Yeah.
We are gonna get asked that.
Cool.
I
The
think
cost, it's always debatable,
Just think about
but
the cost of maintenance.
from our point of view, is the cost prohibitive
It's
for maintenance?
a contentious piece.
It is, you're right.
I think if you're to take a look at want versus need,
I agree.
I think the conversation about a pool would be a want versus a need. The pieces that we're talking about specifically with safety and security, air quality, all of the various components, those are needs. You have to have those. They have to be provided either here or up there. And as you've reviewed the financial piece, it makes more sense to do it up there. I don't know if a pool or a second question just confuses it. The more complex we make this, the harder it is to explain to the general public. And so I wouldn't recommend it.
It is really down to the need, and really that's the way we're gonna have to sell that. It is, you know, a pool would be fantastic, but we need the health and safety of our kids before we look at a pool.
And staff.
And staff.
And if we build a new up there, the pool is a possibility up there, it is not
Yeah,
a possibility
here.
here,
In,
you know.
in the future.
Yeah, in the future, certainly could entertain that and look at
It's
it.
a good way to look at it,
Yeah.
from an explanation
Yeah,
standpoint too.
that, it is, there's a possibility that here,
There's not.
there's not. So,
So, we need more action.
Yeah, so then, I guess we will consider a resolution relating to the issuances of building bonds and calling for election. And have a copy of that, to that resolution.
well, I'll move that we, you know, put the resolution forward, just to get it on the table, and then discuss what the changes need to be.
I'll second that.
So motion by Scott, second by Bob Woods, and so the resolution, the amount is accurate. Building bonds not to exceed $61,900,000. And then, are we just looking forward to the ballot?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the question is that they think that from a wording standpoint, to
Just get rid of the or sale.
or sale.
Also,
Bob?
site and.
If, I think you just have to make the motion that, you strike or sale in the, or include in your motion, strike or sale in the ballot question and any related documents, and then we can have the bond attorney draft you with that changes and provide it to you for your approval with your minutes. Just so that the intent is clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Good, Kelly.
We just say strike or sale in the ballot question.
In other words, site
And related documents. Because I'm not sure where else it shows up in the resolution.
Yeah, that's,
I mean, it shows up other places, I want to make sure we catch them all.
Yeah.
That's all encompassing.
So we'll get that to the attorney and have a final version.
Yeah, you got both of those going. The two words for sale,
Just-
we got last statement, and then site and.
So the last line would read, and the demolition of the existing high school facility.
And as you had mentioned, it should be ballot language and all.
Yeah, I guess site hand would need to come out, because you're not demolishing the site.
Great. Okay, so that is the motion will. Any other discussion?
Actually, I have one more thought on the sixth grade piece, is if I read the language, you are in fact putting an addition on the Trailview facility for grades 7 through 12. Doesn't say where sixth grade is gonna be in that addition. Your entire K-12 campus will be over there, and in the design process, we may move sixth grade, we may not. Your addition is for 7, 12, if that's it.
Pretty much what you said before, just restating it.
Good, it's nice to know that that's the, yeah, that we have that latitude.
You can have that as part of your why and what are the options conversation, but the ballot language could probably say 7, 12.
So we have a motion for the adoption of the resolution and including the ballot language. Where's roll call vote? So Ethan?
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously with 5 voting in favor, 0 opposed, and we have 1 member absent, so thank you. All right, let's say Mr. Point Kelly as school district election clerk for May 12th special election.
So moved.
Motion by Bob, second by Tammy, any further discussion? Hearing that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And passes unanimously. Okay, second open forum. Would you like to address the board? All right, seeing none. Motion to adjourn.
So, second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right.
Well, I guess now I'll have to cancel all my appointments for tomorrow as well as.
Oh, we're-
Just tomorrow, so we have.
Sorry.
She'll understand. Someone has been for years.
Actually, just had a problem.
I don't know, Kelly, are we off?